Hi, welcome to valuationpodcast.com, a podcast and video series about all things related to business and valuation. My name is Melissa Gragg, and I'm a divorce valuation expert in St. Louis, Missouri. I have the pleasure of discussing fraud in times of divorce and following the money trail with Jason Pierce, a forensic accountant in Boston, Massachusetts. You've actually written a lot and presented quite a bit about calculation reports in the context of divorce. So let's talk about this topic because it's very important in the valuation community, but how does it really help, attorneys and business owners?
Yeah, and it gets people's attention.
They get riled up.
Right. And that's kind of the way I approach this stuff. So I'll find a topic that I think has enough interest, and then I'll just kind of do some research on it. And then this case, there was a lot of banter going about on the business value BV update, like back and forth between industry experts, and people have very strong opinions on both sides. Like, never do a calculation in a litigation setting. And on the other side, yeah, it's okay, but not ideal. And so at what point does that, what point does the experts then make that decision for themselves? And so what I did last year at the conference, I just did a survey of all the calculation cases that I could round up. And what I found, and then I did a survey too, and what I found was like the people were willing to do it, willing to testify to a calculation, they were saying yes, that they like the concept of a calculation, but just only half of them, less than half, would be willing to testify to it. But what I think gets a bad rap is just all the initial court cases that came out right after the SSVS or the AICPA's valuation standard. Once that came out, I think it had the added benefit of weeding out some of the practitioners that were abusing the system. And so what you had was a number of court cases that dealt with like rules of thumb, like, oh, I'm going to just do a rule of thumb and I'm going to go testify to it, or a mechanical calculation. I love that term. We could come back to that. Or I'm just going to do a calculation off the buy-sell agreement, et cetera, right? So all of those were rejected. Okay, then the next crop of folks said, okay, well, there was a joint expert, and so where you had basically like one calculation on both sides. And then there was another case called Hipple where, they recognized, like, hey, the AICPA says the calculation is a reputable method. So, or like really, I guess, approach that now we're going to accept it. And so then the next category is really the reliance. And so when you are not directed by the client, where you're not limited in your scope of the procedures to just limit yourself to this buy-sell agreement and call it good. If you have the ability to do your own analysis, that there's some cases, including one in Alabama, this rolling case that dealt with the acceptance in that state, and that was an appeals court case. And so, like, the court said, yeah, let's look to the weight of the testimony from a calculation rather than its admissibility. And that just came back around the Ballard case in Alabama this year that says, oh yeah, instead of overturning that rolling case, we're going to stamp it. It says calculations are okay. And personally, I've testified to 5 calculation reports, and I've got another one next month. So what I think we as practitioners need to be aware of is that the demand is there. As we've seen, especially during the times of the pandemic, people don't have a lot of money to spend on this stuff, or that it just takes some of the fight out of them because they can't get into court for another year. Okay, what's the solution? Okay, well, either do a calculation or or not. But I think the takeaway is that there's a demand. There is a service that we could provide for our clients. There is situations when it works. Obviously, if I have a calculation and you, Melissa, have a conclusion of value, I don't want to be the one going into court without an opinion. I could have an opinion that my calculation of value that is my calculated value, but I don't have an opinion like, here's my conclusion, right? So there needs to be some parity that goes into the decision. But certainly you could start with the calculation and then upgrade as necessary. But But that's what I think is a bigger issue, is that this isn't going to go away. And as practitioners, we need to be responsive to the demand and then just meet that demand in a responsible way. And as we see, like it's more to the weight of that testimony rather than the admissibility, because it is, there's lots of discussion and court cases that have accepted calculation of values, and that we should just be aware of.